I know we live or whatever. So crazy how this shit look different.
Yo, look, y'all just tuning in, man. We spent about the last I want to say 2 hours or so, right, CJ? I'll spend two
Yes.
hours or so just now discussing the Derek Chauvin trial, which is, obviously everybody should know at this point. The whole world knows that Derek Chauvin is on trial right now, standing trial, because he killed George Floyd last year. Was it March of last year, or is it?
Mm. Uh,
You know,
let me
it, it,
got
it was pretty much March or
was
April.
it around?
I
Yeah, it
believe.
was around the same time that the
No,
pandemic.
it all happened. It was like it was Ahmaud Arbery. Then it
Ahmaud Arbery happened in February.
it was my February, then it was
Yeah,
April, right?
right.
For Breonna Taylor, and it was May. I think May was George Floyd, I believe.
Was Breonna April?
All I know is like it was like
It was a
two.
lot of them.
Yeah, it was just like boom, boom, boom. So
My brother in Rochester.
but
So
we've been trying to give some analysis and really give some insight on what has been happening. You're looking at two brothers who graduated law school. CJ's been in the game a little bit longer than me, man. So I'll be leaning on him today to talk exactly more about what it is that we could be looking forward to, what's happening right now with the jury selection process or voir dire. We'll get into more of what this really means in the grand scheme of things. What's going to happen from a defense perspective, what's going to happen from an actual prosecution perspective. But before we do, I think it's important to really lay out, kind of give a snapshot of where we at so far, and then the next piece was going to happen from that is we're going to go over in detail of what are the current charges and begin to line up the facts to that. We're also going to talk about voir dire, what is voir dire, what happens during that selection process, jury selection process, and so on and so forth. And also, if we got time to talk a little bit more about anticipating the arguments of the defense and prosecution. And so, CJ, man, I'll let you kind of jump in, bro.
all right, Rilo, what's going on, brother? Yeah, so if you have not already, definitely we gave a really thorough analysis on our Instagram
Yeah.
page on Black with No Chaser. So I think you should definitely check that out. The first thing that I think we should do, Rilo, is kind of just set the stage, have people to understand
Mhm.
what's taking place, what Derek Chauvin has been charged with, and what's going on in the trial right now. I think that's a really good place to start. Uh, so the first thing I'd say is we talk about those charges, right?
Right.
Um, so Derek Chauvin is
Second degree. There's a second degree murder.
that's right.
Well, we did on other ones too. Though I think it's important to do it. Like maybe
That's what we, yeah.
is go through like the different mens rea elements that's going to be really not just giving y'all a really broad stroke view about what is mens rea and
Right.
how that's going to really play out as we weave in and out of each particular charge that's at an issue in its particular case. So starting with
Right.
first degree murder, and this is not necessarily in line with statutory alignment for the jurisdiction of Minnesota, but we're going to talk again more broadly or generally speaking about what is premeditated murder or capital murder in this particular instance. And so CJ, for folks out there, you're our criminal defense expert right now. What is premeditated or first degree murder?
Yes. So premeditated or first degree murder is exactly what you just said. It's premeditated murder. It's a murder that is an intentional killing of another human being, that is planned, methodical, that is not something that is in the course of the heat of passion, is not something that happens suddenly necessarily. It's something that occurs when an individual plans and calculates an event. So you're going to be looking at intentional and purposeful killing of another human being. That's going to be your premeditated murder. That's your example is your somebody waiting in the bushes, or the OJ trial was an attempt at, at arguing a premeditated uh,
Right.
event, a premeditated killing. And so typically the example that people would often think of is somebody going to Walmart and buying ropes and gags and the weapons and so on and so forth, and then sitting outside someone's house and you know breaking in, and that's what you normally would think of. But there's
Now,
another example that you know of, and that you gave earlier.
oh yeah, I think that like a lot of times, sometimes people think that premeditated murder is like the going through all these substantial steps, right? Or
Right,
lying in wait all the time. Premeditated murder could be, let's say, for example, me and CJ got into an altercation, right? Maybe there was a scuffle back and forth, but nobody died, right? I
right.
left, I left that scene, or
Hmm.
not even left the scene. I left that, went back to my car to grab the gun because maybe I lost. I lost the actual fight. So now I
Right,
go to my car, grab whatever weapon I have, let's say a gun, and then I go back and gun down CJ. That would
right.
be purposeful and premeditated murder. So you don't have to have some calculated
Absolutely.
plan. And you need just literally a second in which the blood has cooled, right? And we're
Right,
gonna get to what manslaughter is and provocation and warming of the blood and all that good stuff like that. But I'll need a split second to say, this is what I intend to do. And I'm gonna
right,
do it in a purposeful manner. I'm gonna go to my car, I'm gonna grab my gun, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna shoot and kill. And that was my intent to actually kill CJ. And even if I didn't intend to kill CJ, the fact that I used a gun and in terms of imminent harm or bodily injury, right? And then the result thereafter was him dying, that
right.
still would constitute premeditated murder. So that's
That's right.
premeditated in a nutshell. Second degree murder, CJ, what are we looking at?
Right. So that's first degree murder. Derek Chauvin was not charged with first degree murder. Second degree murder in Minnesota is a cause of death of a human being with the intent to affect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So essentially, what that means is that you either know or intend to kill someone, but you didn't plan to do it. For example, Derek Chauvin didn't plan on meeting George Floyd that day. I apologize for the phone in the background. Derek Chauvin didn't plan on meeting George Floyd that day, but George Floyd, you know, unfortunately crossed paths with Derek Chauvin on that day, and they that was an encounter that occurred that wound up resulting in the death of George Floyd. So, for the purposes of this particular statute, the elements that you want to look at of the crime is causing the death of a human being with the intent to affect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. Um,
I think that so what y'all saying is that, and this is why, and we're not going to read the statute out. If y'all want to get the full reading of statute, you can always go look up second degree murder in Minnesota, or you can also
mhm,
go to our IG lives, and we just spent entire 2 hours going over the statute. But for
right,
the sake of time, for the purpose of this, second degree, at least in my opinion, I think CJ agrees with me at this point, is second degree is going to be harder to convict on because of the mens rea component of the particular statute. But moreover, though, it's really the way the statutory language is set out in Minnesota. It's confusing. And so the defense, when the trial court judge, and we talked about this already, did not allow for the third degree or lesser included offense to be included into the actual trial, what it was doing was the defense knew at the time, the defense knew that, hey, look, I know second degree is hard to get. It's going to be hard to prove that our client knowingly did what he did, whether intentional or unintentional, right?
right.
In the third degree instance, though, CJ, what are we looking at?
Okay. So, in third degree, what you have in Minnesota is whoever, without intent to affect the death of any person, causes the death of another person by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life is guilty of murder in the third degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 25 years. So, to put that in more plain language, third degree murder is murder where intent is not necessary. We don't need to know whether you intended to do something or not. We don't know. We don't need to know if you intended to kill a human being or cause the death of another. All we need to know is that you recklessly disregarded the possibility of causing the death of another, and your actions did result in the death of another. Um, so that's what we got as far as the degrees are concerned. Last thing I'll say, And we'll probably get back into. We'll probably jump back on Facebook a little later. I think you gotta move around a little bit. Uh, is with that second degree that exists. There's a second degree charge, which speaks to intent uh, or knowledge of your actions resulting in the death of George Floyd, knowledge of Derek Chauvin's actions resulting in the death of George Floyd, which requires the jury to kind of think, be in the head of of Derek Chauvin at the time of the act. Uh, the other is the intent doesn't matter. I don't have to know whether or not, as a juror, I don't have to know whether or not he intended to kill, or his actions were an intentional act resulting in the death of George Floyd. And so, in that
That's right.
regard, yeah,
That's right. So essentially, the defense is hoping for the second. I mean, not the defense. The prosecution is hoping that the second degree murder charge can stick. But in the event that they can't really prove his mens rea, then they move down to the third degree charge. And I'm just more so summarizing exactly what CJ has said, because he's precisely correct, which is essentially they wouldn't have to prove the mens rea side of getting to the mind of Derek Chauvin in that particular instance, which is the easier offense to prove in this particular case. And so what we're looking like is that when we line up fact for fact, right? Let's just look at the third offense really quickly, and we'll end it here. We'll come back later tonight to explain more about it. But we're looking at whoever. The statute literally begins with whoever, and it says in comma, basically regardless of someone's intent, right? Without intent, whoever without intent. The next piece is acts in a dangerous manner that ends up that shows that person has depraved heart, and because of that depraved heart, that another person is actually found dead. In this particular case, Derek Chauvin being the whoever, the person found dead was George Floyd. I think the question of the third degree now hinges upon whether or not the prosecution can prove that Derek Chauvin actually operated with a depraved heart. And so I think that, and CJ, correct me if I'm wrong, or agree to disagree with me, but I think that it's going to be the crux of the case here, especially when we're talking about how hard it's going to be to convict under Mississippi's second degree murder statute.
Right, under Minnesota's second degree murder statute.
Minnesota, why I keep saying Mississippi? Minnesota.
Cause you mean that's what we
Oh
so,
man, Minnesota, y'all, Minnesota. Damn, Minnesota.
So, no, it's all good. I think I just want to make clear that the prosecution appealed to the Court of Appeals, Minnesota Court of Appeals, to try to get the murder in the third degree charge included. And the reason that this is important is because the trial judge initially tried to exclude that murder in the third degree charge. And so it was critical for that to happen. And that's why the trial was delayed on Monday.
That's right.
They were trying to get that third charge in there because it makes it easier for the prosecution to pursue a conviction for murder. The reason that the second degree charge is a little bit more complicated is because, again, intent is a harder threshold to prove. Knowledge is a harder threshold to prove. On the if it was a ladder of elements, knowledge is intent is the highest level. Knowledge is the second level. Reckless disregard is the third level.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives them two chances to argue murder. And it gives them the ability to argue that he knew that he was murdering George Floyd, that he intended to kill him when he stayed on his neck for 8 minutes. But even if he didn't intend to kill him, it was unreasonable.
That's right.
A reasonable human being would have acted in the manner in which he did, of standing on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And because he was unreasonable, and because his unreasonableness resulted in the death of George Floyd, he still should be guilty of murder in the third degree.
Yeah,
you don't have to look to what his intent was.
That's right. So look, y'all, we're gonna be back later tonight. I'm Cirilo. This is CJ. This is CJ right over here, right here. But yeah, we're gonna be back tonight though, to really, because we're gonna put a cap on today We got a whole day two worth of trial to that's still going on. They're in the Vordia process. We want to talk more about that with y'all. I think a lot of times the real case, honestly, the real case is won sometimes during this Vordia process, a jury selection process. So y'all stay with us. We'll be back with more coverage until later. Peace
Yes,
out.
yes. Thank y'all for tuning in.
Later.